I'm Lucy.
And I just woke up.
Oh, this is gonna be a great one today.
I've mentioned this. You guys are gonna have to carry this one because I have not much to say about this episode.
I am just a picture today.
You're David Tennant today.
Wow!
It,
This is not David
uh,
Tennant. This is his cousin, Bill.
Okay, Nicholas just woke up. I'm falling asleep, and Edward's a picture, and today we're going to be talking about.
Griffin Claw. It's one of those days.
maybe you guys can corroborate that it just doesn't leave an impression at all, but I feel like it's sort of my fault. Like every time we watch one of these, I watch it like again for these casts. Even with episodes I don't like, really hard to pay attention to every scene. And it's the same whenever I review something because I don't want to like screw up and miss something that could get me really invested. But I had a hard time like not just playing with my phone or making food during this episode.
The problem with this episode, there's a lot going on all the time. Like, it's not bad pacing, but nothing sticks with you.
Two things stick with me, and they're the two things that I can talk about.
Rose.
And freaking kung fu monks.
I still don't understand what even happened in this episode. I've seen it recently, and it's just nothing sticks with you.
Edward, how well do you comprehend this episode? Because I don't think that, like, forgetting plot points is necessarily the problem.
It's alright.
Like, it's a convoluted, difficult to remember plot. Not much happens. A bunch of monks bring a werewolf to friggin' Elizabeth I. Elizabeth I is visiting.
Torchwood House. Bum
Yeah.
bum bum.
The Torchwood Estate, because we're still seeding that. So the bunch of monks bring in this werewolf. They brought it here specifically to kill Queen Elizabeth so that they could then usurp the throne. And that's the episode. That's everything. And it turned out to be a trap where they stopped the werewolf. But this episode's problem isn't that too much happens, it's that nothing happens.
It's that Rose wasn't actually naked.
Yeah, I remember like a screenshot from this episode, actually the first image of Rose and 10 that I'd ever seen, and I remember thinking she looked really pretty and being really disappointed when she turned out to be an awful character.
Ha ha.
Billie Piper is gorgeous. Rose is just
The worst.
It's like it affects how I look at her. Like I think Billie Piper is really pretty, but now I can't think that Rose is pretty because she's just awful.
her personality is so awful. It's like you can't even look at her anymore.
Yeah, and it's like the worst thing about that is that Rose doesn't add anything to this episode. I feel like I've said something close to that with a couple of these, but no, this is the first episode.
Jack would add something.
Maybe, I don't know.
This would have been a good spot to leave him if you wanted to set up the Torchwood spinoff.
You're right, but at the same time, he wouldn't be adding much to the werewolf plot, and I'm not convinced that Elizabeth would leave him in charge, considering that she banishes the Doctor and Rose. So if Jack was around, then she'd probably just banish him with the two of them.
I just wanted to see Jack hit on the Queen.
I think the only purpose seems to be for this episode is to set up Torchwood.
Which will come to fruition in the finale.
Well, I mean, what this episode does is it sets up Torchwood as like, okay, this is the reason that Torchwood exists in the capacity it does, is like stopping aliens and supernatural stuff. But that's not something that we needed a whole episode to explain. Like, just have someone offhandedly mention that Queen Elizabeth I decided the friggin' Torchwood should exist to stop aliens because she knew about aliens. It's just that this is the most basic Base Under Siege story. Rose doesn't do anything. She just has that really stupid running gag. It stops being funny the moment it happens.
So I guess everyone forgets Dr. Mary and Queen Elizabeth first.
Thought about that and whether or not it makes any sense with this episode, but no, like it completely doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't recognize 10 of all doctors. But hey, that just means that we can forget so it ever happened.
Yeah. I guess the best way to describe this episode after I got done watching this with my mom recently, I said, well, that was a cluster.
Oh no, we haven't reached a cluster yet. We'll have to get to fear her for that.
There's monks trying to turn the queen into a werewolf for some reason. I don't know why, and it's just to set up Torchwood, and Rose is really annoying the whole episode. That's pretty much sums up.
I hesitate to call it a cluster because nothing happens. The monks show up and they have their kung fu thing, which is stupid and choreographed and edited. It depends on how you're using that metaphor, I guess. That's a really bad action scene.
It looks out of place, too, like someone else filmed it.
Yeah.
Ocean jump!
Every time I see that scene, like if someone uses it like in a fan-made video or something, I forget that's from Doctor Who. It doesn't look like it's from the show.
I mean, forgetting the fact that this whole episode seems like it's in a different camera quality than the entire rest of the season, that scene in particular, the colors look super washed out. They're clearly taking influence from John Woo with the slow motion, but it doesn't look good. I mean, yeah, budget, but at the same time, why are you doing a martial arts sequence? You have to cut twice every second. The point of putting a martial arts action is that you get martial artists to do martial arts, and you leave the camera so that they can impress people with how well you know martial arts.
And I'm back.
Oh, hey, Edward's a person.
I'm a person again.
He regenerated.
That just means you have a physical body that can feel pain as we talk about this episode.
Getting eaten by this Curse of Fenric disc.
We could have been talking about Curse of Fenric.
When I rewatched this episode, I remember, like nothing stuck. And I thought, well, maybe I was just, bored that day or... No, it just doesn't stick with you. It's a mess.
But yeah, I mean, okay, so the martial arts sequence is ridiculous. The only thing I can say about Rose is that if you just want to have her around to be comic relief, then that's fine, but her one joke isn't funny.
No, it actually is really irritating, and it makes me hate her even more.
You were not amused.
People are dying!
Yes, I was just going to say that. People are dying around her, and she's still trying to win a bet. So I'm like, wow.
I get the idea that, like, Queen Elizabeth has to point that out, and she's like at the end, oh, you guys do all this stuff and you think it's fun, but no, it's dangerous and you can't be allowed to be around here, so get out. It's not even funny the first time it happened. Like I was trying to say earlier, like, he mentions to the doctor, I bet you I can get her to say I'm not amused. And the very first time she tries it, it's not funny.
And what really annoys me about the whole thing, like there is a scene where a guy, which I don't understand what he's planning on doing, he's going to sacrifice himself, and she just stands there and watches him. So basically, he sacrificed himself for nothing, and then she goes in there and says, are you not amused? She just witnessed somebody die.
That's the moment where Queen Bess is actually like, what are you doing? We allowed to acknowledge that this was stupid. This episode gets plus points for having a Jamie reference, so that's cool. We could have had Jamie in this episode instead of Rose.
I think what else happened in the episode?
Terribly dated CGI werewolf.
Oh, yeah, that was bad.
Well, I mean, again, this show's budget in 2006, it's okay.
Do you think they should have gone with like a makeup thing?
Yeah, I mean, I know the appeal of using CG in 2006, but if it were me, I would have used makeup. But, geez, that's hard. Because you can use makeup for face. If you're trying like a big, scary, hulking werewolf, then I'm not convinced that that would cost more money. Plus, I want to be kind of light on it because I see effects in shows today that look worse.
The problem with werewolves, I noticed they are really hard for some reason for like TV shows to make convincingly scary.
Interesting characters like on Angel and Being Human.
Yeah, it's just because it's a complicated design, right? Like, you have to make it a giant feral dog, but also not a dog, a somewhat human-like physique, and its legs have to be backward or, like, double-jointed, and it has to have, like, opposable hands and pecs or whatever. It has to be recognizably human while also not, and it's a hard design to pull off unless you've got, like, a crap ton of money.
I noticed, like, a lot of people, they try to do, like, the half-wolf thing, a bit with the face, stuff like that, but it doesn't ever seem to work very well on television.
Well, you do have the easy out if you could just let them wear clothes. Just let this guy wear clothes.
Yeah, they could do that, but even when they just do the face, it still just looks off on television. I think it's less, like you said, you have a big budget, it just kind of falls apart. So maybe they should try to avoid werewolves in the future.
And I'm trying to think if we had a reason to make this guy a werewolf beyond just the surface level, wouldn't it be cool to do a werewolf episode of Doctor Who?
Werewolves are aliens now.
I mean, I buy it with this show, but at the same time, it's just like, what was our story reason to make this guy a werewolf instead of just any other type of monster? Because it doesn't add anything.
A vampire would probably be better.
Maybe?
Nah, I wouldn't think so. I mean, I get what they were trying to do. They want like a monster to come after them. And a werewolf is a monster. And a vampire is kind of still human-like too much. I don't see them like running away from a vampire during the whole episode like they did with this.
We've done like more monstrous, less cognitive vampires on this show before, or something similar. Did we ever do a thing in the classic series where it was like we've got a vampire equivalent and it's pretty mindless?
There is vampires in Curse of Fenric.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, or something similar to vampires. They can talk, but they're not monsters before they're people reasoned with.
I mean, I guess it could have worked, but I think they wanted something big, something giant, is the way they were trying to play it.
But then it's not really around long enough to be a big scary thing. And like the only other note I had is just about the acting.
Meh.
Yeah, but like the guy who is the werewolf and the dude and his wife, the two of them have some pretty bad line reads, I think.
What was the telescope diamond thing?
Yeah, this convoluted prophecy nonsense, which will get worse.
Yeah, I guess these two guys just had a really, really good intuition. Because the idea is they make the telescope, and they make like the room around the telescope perfect for reflecting light off this diamond. But the diamond isn't quite right yet, so they have to have it cut down regularly until it's perfect to reflect the light onto the werewolf, which they know is coming somehow.
It's like Russell T was writing the script thinking, okay, I need to figure out a way to make this relevant. Oh yeah, let's just have these two guys that we never see or hear about playing out convolutedly.
This is another episode written by him, then. I seem to always forget which episodes he specifically writes.
I forgot that he wrote this one. That explains a lot.
For a while, I assumed this had to be someone else, like this had to be some one-time guy.
Nah, it's Russell.
I dislike a lot of Russell's episodes, but I hold him to a higher standard than this.
Yeah, I thought it was somebody else too because it's mostly just filler episodes until the very end, and that's not even to set up Doctor Who. That's to set up Torchwood. So
Torchwood appears in Doctor Who first.
Yeah, it does. But like we know that show is happening. At this point, we know we're making that show. So
yeah,
I get like the showrunners wanting to do like story-based episodes or things to set up like spin-offs or something, but there's really nothing here that like that little tiny bit at the end. Russell could wrote that in 2 seconds and let someone else do the rest.
I think you just described it perfectly when you said anyone could have written it. It doesn't feel like one of his episodes. It just feels like we need a Doctor Who episode. Make one. It can be about whatever.
Stephen Fry was gonna write an episode of Doctor Who for this series about like one of the sub-Arthurian legends, but then it ended up being too expensive to make script-wise.
Right, so they had to fill in the slot with something. But that wasn't this episode, that was Fear Her.
Yeah, it was either Fear Her or Love and Monsters, one of those two.
And neither of those episodes are good. I think those two are worse than this.
I love Love and Monsters. There, I said it.
We'll get to that. I am interested to discuss that at least.
The short version is, I like it more than Day of the Doctor.
What?
That's gonna be interesting. I don't like either of those episodes. There's more in them to keep me, like, thinking than there is this episode.
Boring and dull.
It's badly written, kind of a cluster, especially towards the end with the diamond and the telescope. Feels like filler, and it's just made to set up Torchwood.
He maybe not have a thing where, like, the royal family is werewolves, even though that makes no sense.
Put a sci-fi spin on the royal disease at some point, right?
The queen, she gets scratched, she tries to hide it.
It's nothing. No, it's nothing. He wasn't touched. Nope. No.
It's there for a stupid joke at the end.
Yeah. She goes from being brave and loyal and ready to sacrifice herself if she needs to, yeah, they're not wrong with me.
Like I've said before, I don't have a problem with filler in Doctor Who, but something cool has to be happening. It has to be interesting, cool filler.
Everyone always liked Bathhouse filler, and I think stuff like this is why.
Final thoughts. I had this much to say about this episode. I thought I was going to be mostly silent for this. It's a nothing episode. Like some of these episodes we've been watching for these talks, I'm like, oh wow, these are better than I remember them being. I'm gonna go back to this just to enjoy it. Like I'm probably gonna watch Boomtown just for the sake of enjoying Boomtown somewhere down the road. I never thought that would happen. This episode I'm probably never going to watch again for any reason.
No.